You see it swish? Hello, my roundish interdimensional friends. Your pal Arlo here, and today I am reviewing Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. My personal Kirby adventure has been something of a roller coaster ride. Star Allies was a grave disappointment that did not give me hope for the rest of the Puffballs games. But then Forgotten Land blew me away, and for the first time I found myself connecting more with this world and its characters. Since then, I've been eager to go back and play older titles, ideally the games that Kirby fans tend to refer to as the good ones. Well, an enhanced remaster of Kirby's Wii Adventure seemed like the perfect choice. So then it is time to find out. Is Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, I'm sorry, I don't want to, I usually do like a, is it this or is it that? And it's kind of a pun. I really don't, I don't feel like it. I'm changing my review format. I don't even know if I'm doing the puns anymore. I might later, I'm not really sure. Nothing is set in stone, but yeah, just not in the mood. I'm sorry. As I said, I'm still relatively new to the series, but the very first thing that Return to Dreamland Deluxe taught me about Kirby was that it's safe to assume any given adventure is going to start with a portal randomly opening up in the sky and/or stuff raining down from the sky. In this case, the portal comes from another dimension, and the things raining down are a giant ship and all of its parts and energy spheres. Through a very fun and clearly entirely redone cutscene, we meet Magalor and learn that he needs help gluing his ship back together. It's a simple setup, but I actually really like it. Magalor is a cool character, and helping a new friend is more unique than simply stopping a new bad guy from doing new bads. I also have sympathy for any traveler who needs to gather up ship parts, as you can probably imagine. So Kirby and his friends set off to fix Magalor's ship, and this adventure leads them through a number of colorful environments filled with lots of enemies and challenges, which I totally expected. Jeez, Kirby, talk about predictable. Anyway, first let's touch on the presentation. Being a remaster of an SD-era game, it doesn't look quite as good as Kirby's contemporary titles. Just a few elements are slightly uneven. For instance, I don't really like the mix of 2D and 3D on the overworld, and I'm also not a fan of the cel-shady outlines on the character models. I would have gone without that entirely. It just doesn't seem to serve enough of a purpose in my eyes. However, overall, the game looks great. Lots of very fun environments, especially in the latter half of the game. The backgrounds are particular standouts. Everything is very well polished with lots of visual flair and charm, and of course the menus all look and feel great. It easily lives up to the Kirby standard on the whole. And golly goodness, does this game have the best music, or is it just me? For years, I've been sticking Kirby music in my videos, and I didn't realize until now just how many of those tracks come from this game. Pretty much every track here is terrific. Then the gameplay in Return to Dreamland Deluxe is as fun as ever. It definitely feels like Star Allies in most ways, including how the environment is put together and how you interact with it. It includes most of the same mechanics, which made it feel instantly familiar when I picked it up, but not in a bad way. In fact, it didn't take long before I started to reflect on my time with Star Allies, and I might as well just get this out of the way now. I always knew what that game's problems were, but Return to Dreamland has made me realize the extent to which AI partners specifically hurt that previous experience. I have a whole new appreciation for just how much that whole mechanic absolutely ruined Star Allies for me. I was so frustrated that the game was largely being played for me that it made it difficult to enjoy and appreciate the good that was actually there. Return to Dreamland is incredibly similar, yet it's infinitely more enjoyable. It feels a good deal more challenging than Star Allies at its core as well. The AI partners, again, really didn't help in this regard, but even ignoring them, that game was so laughably easy that it often crossed that line from accessible to all ages to why am I even playing this? But no, I think this game is indeed just a bit harder. Still nothing crazy, but it requires a lot more actual effort, and I had to redo some some parts and some battles a handful of times. Just challenging enough to be engaging and satisfying, and that's really all I'm looking for. And actually, when I do want something more challenging, beating the game unlocks a straight-up hard mode. Kirby has less health, bosses have new moves, and the world is populated by an army of remixed and often resized baddies, so it offers surprises on top of just being harder. Thank you! Seriously, thank you! This is what I wanted. This is what I needed! I haven't had time to get very far in this new mode, but I'm of the opinion that this is one thing that gives Return to Dreamland a huge advantage over any game with just the one difficulty setting. Oh, something like this for Forgotten Land would have been amazing! Then as far as design goes, while I wouldn't really know for sure without giving Star Allies another go with all of this in mind and comparing the two very closely, my gut tells me that this game is indeed just a better game. It plays so similarly, the feel and the mechanics are mostly identical, but the levels themselves seem to be much more enjoyable, showing off a great design sense and offering loads of cute, borderline puzzly challenges to enjoy. It's not exceptionally complex, obviously, because these games are meant to be very accessible, but it's still highly enjoyable. Well, most of the time. There are a handful of levels that, in my opinion, don't really introduce any interesting ideas, or fail to deliver on ideas that start out interesting. It feels like an improvement, but some of my level design disappointment has indeed carried over from Star Allies, which is a shame. It's even tougher after playing Forgotten Land, which featured exceptional design all the way through. But that's enough dwelling on the past. It may be simpler than I like sometimes, but Return to Dreamland is still highly enjoyable. I didn't mess around with co-op at all, but I do think it's very cool to have it as an option, as always. If the game has got one primary hook versus the other games, it's these extra powerful versions of Kirby's classic copy abilities. Sometimes you'll find these extra dimensional baddies, which temporarily grant you these abilities, and I like the idea that something so powerful could only come from another universe. Is this mechanic enough to hinge a whole game on? No. Does it do anything particularly interesting to change how the game is played? No. Is this really just one example of countless Nintendo games where the quote-unquote new mechanic entirely boils down to you get all big and crazy strong for a bit sometimes? Absolutely. But, it's fun. These sequences are very limited, very brief, tightly scripted. You just kind of run forward and smash everything you come across. But while it's shallow, it's also highly satisfying. The visual spectacle is enjoyable, and it always feels nice to take out a huge group of enemies or even chunks of a level with one attack. Super crazy boom boom sequences always lead to these extra stages where you have to run from a weird energy wall. And these can be fun as well. It's all about thinking on your feet and figuring out how to open up the stage little by little so you can progress. It's here that you have to use another new-ish ability, which is really just holding down the inhale button to do an extra strong inhale that sucks up large blocks. It's another very simple mechanic, but it's also decently interesting. It's fun to suck up all this stuff and send it blasting ahead where it breaks through rocks and disables hazards. There are quite a lot of these chase sequences, and a couple even had me retrying a few times, but they're short enough that they never feel like a chore, which is a great relief. This kind of thing has the potential to become annoying after a while, though I will gripe a little about how aggressively the energy wall rubber bands behind you. You can get way ahead of it, but it will always teleport to the edge of the screen when you slow down. I get that they did that to increase tension, and maybe that was the right choice, but it's a little annoying. Also, it's a bummer that every mini-boss at the end of these levels is the same enemy iterated slightly upon many times, but again, I guess I get it. Back to the game at large though, I love the huge collection of copy abilities on display. There are so many to choose from and cycle through that it keeps the experience always feeling fresh, always changing. My favorites from Star Allies are all here, along with lots of new ones, and as always, these abilities drastically alter Kirby's moveset. I'm actually still getting used to how much copy abilities change up the gameplay and how many moves there are to learn. The pause menu fills you in on these movesets, including little moves and combos I would have never figured out otherwise, so that's nice. Another minor complaint, the mecha ability, newly added to this remaster, is entirely overpowered, rendering rendering most of the game's bosses completely trivial. I can use it to fly through the boss rush mode with no trouble at all, so that's kinda disappointing. Speaking of variety though, the game's worlds provide a lot of it. This game is still shorter than I would like, and maybe not too far off from the length of Star Allies, but it's so much easier to take thanks to its pacing. Each world only has 4 or 5 levels, but there are a fair number of worlds, so nothing ever drags. You're always pressing through to new places with new themes and styles. It's always moving, always fresh, always getting more and more interesting, especially as you approach the game's finale. No spoilers, obviously, but as seems to be the case with most, if not all Kirby games, the final act is when the game is at its absolute best. And even if the story doesn't go quite as dark and deep as it does in other titles, it still comes to a fun and satisfyingly epic conclusion. While Return to Dreamland's main campaign is relatively short, this deluxe version is bolstered by a pretty decent amount of side content. Magalor's ship is filled with little challenges that unlock as you collect energy spheres, and here you can also play minigames. Then of course there's the new mode, Magoland, where all the minigames are presented like a cute little theme park. I'm not a minigame guy, I'm not a score chaser, I don't usually want to play one little thing over and over and over again. However, I can certainly see the value here for people that do like that stuff, and even I've had a decent time. There are loads of minigames to choose from, and they're all really fun, some of them even feeling decently deep when it comes to skill and strategy, and I might as well touch on each briefly. Bomb Rally, where you smack bombs around with a frying pan, trying not to get blown up. Not my favorite, but a decent idea. Booming Blasters, where you try to shoot your opponents. Very frantic. I could see this one going down great at parties. Checkerboard Chase, where you collapse the stage and try to make your opponents fall. An incredibly simple concept, but surprisingly tricky. A terrific blend of strategic planning and quick thinking. One of my favorites for sure. Crackety Hack, where you try to crack through as much of the planet as possible. This was always my favorite when I messed around with Superstar at my friend's house as a kid, so it's really nice to see it return. Egg Catcher, where you try to eat eggs but avoid bombs, all of which are being chucked at you pretty quickly. Another tricky one and quite fun. Kirby on the Draw, where you shoot at targets and try to earn the most points. Not personally a big fan of this one, whether using button or touch controls, but it'd probably be fun with friends. Magalor's Tome Trackers, where you have to match symbols Magalor gives you. Not super into this one either. I guess I just don't like minigames where you gotta fumble around and find the right thing before your opponents do. Too stressful, I guess. Ninja Dojo, where you throw shurikens and try to hit targets. Another one that's good, but not terribly fun to me. I don't like having to estimate the time between pressing the button and the hit actually landing, so it's another one I find too stressful to want to play much. Smash Ride, where you scoot around and charge up to ram opponents off the stage. This is a favorite. It's satisfying to play and also very hectic. Another one that would be great with friends. Samurai Kirby, where you have to strike before your opponent does once the signal has been given. Incredibly simple, yet highly entertaining, especially with all the cute little animations that play depending on which character wins. And finally, Samurai Kirby 100, where you can play Samurai Kirby once a day against 99 other players. This is an incredibly clever and phenomenally fun little feature, and I really appreciate it. I know it's just recording everyone's data instead of making us actually face off against each other live, and when I do really well, I'm suspicious of the matchmaking. I'm not that good, but it's a great little distraction to return to now and again. So overall, the minigames are quite strong, and even a non-minigame fan such as myself can still have some fun thanks to the supporting features. There are loads of missions to tackle, which are basically achievements or trophies, and you can earn stamps which grant you items to use in the main game, as well as a huge assortment of fun masks to collect, which can also be used in the main game. It's just enough reward and sense of progression to keep me popping into Magoland every once in a while, which also helps with the game's pacing and variety. I mean, how can you not keep coming back here? It's fun! Speaking of extracurriculars though, the star attraction here is Magalor Epilogue. I could see someone not liking how you have to beat the main game to unlock the epilogue, but it was nice to get to know the character a bit before getting into his story. The idea is that he's lost all of his powers and you gotta get him back. Now, I know I just started on this part, but I gotta talk about something else for a second, and this is gonna sound like an aside, but it's related. I'm starting to really enjoy Kirby and appreciate its unique style. I really loved Forgotten Land, and I enjoyed Return to Dreamland, and I'll be happy to play whatever comes next. However, there are certain things about it that don't completely mesh with me. I can completely recognize the value they offer, they're just not quite for me personally. For instance, Kirby is all about his copy abilities. That's at the core of his identity. It's a great idea, and I appreciate the variety it offers, but I also find myself a little frustrated by it. Constantly switching between forms, sometimes with wildly different movesets, it wears me down after a while. Sometimes it's a little exhausting when I can't just stick with a form that feels good, and I have to struggle with the shortcomings of whatever form I'm currently forced to use. It's also frustrating having my ability smacked out of me when I take damage, and having to scramble to get it back and struggle with the rest of a boss fight if I fail. Then there's Kirby's whole float ability. Jumping more than once comes with a price. You are now puffed up, and to use an ability again, you first have to spit out your air. This just feels awkward to me. It's a relatively small thing, yet I find it getting in my way a pretty good amount. So basically, while I like Kirby, these elements do prevent it from fully clicking with me. And the reason I bring all this up is that Magalor Epilogue sidesteps every single one of these issues and is, as a result, incredibly fun. Magalor has a single, consistent moveset. It starts out simple and evolves as you complete chapters and earn new abilities, so it's deep without ever feeling overwhelming. Even better, at the beginning, he's very, very weak. His attacks are small with very little range, and his mobility leaves a lot to be desired. But then in each stage, you collect magic blorps or whatever, and you also earn them by defeating enemies. There's even a fun combo system where the more hits you can land in succession, the more blorps you get, which normally I wouldn't be too into, but it's not strictly necessary unless you're going for score, so it's just a nice option to get some bonuses. Then you take these blorps and use them to level up every single one of his abilities, plus things like HP, how long combos last, all sorts of stuff. This is a very Arlo-flavored mechanic. It's particularly delightful for me because the guest star mode in Star Allies came close to being something I wanted to play with its single moveset characters and light progression system, but the focus on speed and overall less enjoyable level design stopped it short. This, however, is everything I wanted that mode to be and more. By the end of the campaign, you're basically a deity. You've got all these attacks and moves that you've powered up like crazy, and you've also learned how to properly use them, and I don't have to tell you that that's a very good feeling. Between the moveset, the progression, and the excellent level design that really utilizes all the tools in your belt and grows in complexity along with them, Magalor Prologue is a fantastic time. Easily my favorite part of the game. It isn't incredibly long, maybe a few hours if you charge right through it. In the context of the greater game, it's a pretty reasonable amount of content, and I felt satisfied with it, especially since I'm sure it will be a lot of fun to burn through again in the future. But boy, it does make me sad that there isn't more Kirby content like this out there. I know it'll never happen, but I would gladly play an entire Magalor spin-off game. As a relatively new Kirby fan, it felt good to jump right into the definitive version of one of his best adventures, and I have not come away disappointed. I don't think 2D Kirby is ever gonna mesh with me completely, and I'm still very much hoping that Kirby's future is in the third dimension. But if more past or future games offer up experiences like this, consider me interested. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is a breezy, charming, and very fun little package. The perfect remedy for this harsh, cynical age that we live in. Plus, it's got Magalor. Magalor's awesome. Before we wrap up this review, I thought it would be fun to get a second opinion from a very big Kirby fan in my life. I'm of course referring to Quillen, my 7-year-old nephew. Quillen, hello, how are you?
I'm really good.
So, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. What do you think? What do you think about the graphics?
The graphics are really good, as well as all the new Kirby games.
Yeah, all the new ones are really good. They all look nice.
And I also like just how you get to slide around. It's just so smooth.
Slide around?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Like, you can kind of just walk really smoothly. It never lags.
You like the animation, the quick frame rate. The frame rate is a lot higher than Forgotten Land. Yes, it is very, very smooth.
Yeah, and like when I said slide around, I meant literally. You can duck and then you can press A.
That
so
too,
you can
yes.
Slide around.
Literally slide
Yeah.
around. And what about the gameplay? There's a lot of cool copy abilities.
Yeah. My three of my favorites are my favorite is Ninja. My second favorite is Mech, and my third favorite is probably Sword.
Sword, yeah. Sword is that's a good classic one. And I see you spending a lot of time at Merry Magoland playing the mini
yeah.
games. You played the absolute heck out of those.
I played everything, and I've beaten every game on all difficulties. So
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
And I've also gotten 100 missions.
Got 100 missions. I have not even done that.
And
Yeah,
10.
He's way better at the mini games.
I got
than I am.
111 missions. I like how there's a selection of missions called extra missions. And then you get to all the missions in the start. It says like true extra missions.
The true extra missions. Would you say that, because you have the main story, would you say that the mini games add a lot of content and value to the game?
And I really like Magoland because of the Samari Kirby 100. I just like to time it.
Yes, that's very, very fun. What do you think about Magalor's whole story?
Oh yeah, I like the interdimensional one. You get to collect a bunch of thingies, but when you max it out, it's just see how many digits you can do before you can't see anything.
Yeah, you played it a lot. So out of the main story, the Magalor story, and Magoland with the mini games, what's your favorite part?
I really like. It's a really big twist how in the main story, Magalor...
Whoa, no spoilers, no spoilers. Not everyone's played the game. We can't give spoilers.
Fine.
What's your favorite part?
My favorite part...
Out of those 3 chunks of the game.
Yeah. My favorite part is that in Magoland, you just get to wander around. You can't take damage or the mini games, and you also get a stamp rally that gets up to 99, and I've already maxed that.
So your favorite part about the game is the mini games?
Yeah, I love the mini games and just how many things you can do.
Yeah. So what are your overall thoughts on Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe?
Oh.
Is that a thumbs up or a thumbs down? You hate this game. You've played it a lot.
Yeah.
I imagine you probably like it. That's double thumbs up. Double thumbs up and a heart.
I'm turning it into a heart.
Turning it into a heart too. Well, cool. And thank you so much for joining us and giving us your opinion on Kirby. We'll see you later.
Okay.
I feel bad about not doing the pun at the beginning, so I figured the least I could do is give you something, some kind of pun, some kind of Kirby pun. This game really ended up being a superstar. No, this puffball copy ability DDD. This game really